The body of an American man killed while fighting alongside Ukrainian defenders is finally on the way home tonight after a swap with Russia. This as Putin's army prepares for a major battle inside the largest Ukrainian city still controlled by Moscow. CNN's Fred Pleitgen has our report from the war zone.
Ukrainian forces trying to hit the Russians on all fronts. This mortar unit firing in the north of the country, while in the south, Kiev is continuing a counteroffensive trying to capture the Russian-occupied city of Kherson. We met up with an artillery unit on the battlefield. The soldiers tell us there's firing going on here pretty much every day, several times a day. The front line is not very far from where we are at all. It's a couple of kilometers in that direction. And right now, there's not very much movement on that front line, but still, the situation is very dangerous. Ukraine's defense minister says Kiev's counteroffensive here is complicated by wet weather in the area. But the commander says he believes in the end they will oust the Russians.
I know one thing for sure. We will never step back from here. We have no other choice. Only forward. Ukraine has to get back all its territory and borders.
While Russia continues to mobilize hundreds of thousands for the war here, the Ukrainians say they found the Wagner private military company, founded by Putin ally Yevgeny Prigozhin, is sending Russian prisoners with diseases to the front line. The chief of Ukraine's military intelligence told CNN's Nick Robertson.
І вони навіть їх маркують.
They put on them certain wristbands in blue, white, or red color. Every color signifies tuberculosis, hepatitis, or HIV. It's happening on a mass scale. Most of them who were taken prisoners or their dead bodies, which were found in the battlefield, had those wristbands.
CNN can't independently verify those claims. As Russian forces continue to lose ground in Ukraine, the Kremlin conducting massive annual nuclear drills involving submarine-launched ballistic missiles and others launched from Russia's fleet of strategic bombers. While the Russians notified the U.S. about the drills well in advance, Russian President Vladimir Putin with a clear warning to Washington.
What they are trying to achieve, we see on the example of Ukraine, which has become an instrument of American foreign policy. The country has practically lost sovereignty and is directly controlled from the United States.
But the Ukrainians on the front line say they are fighting for their own freedom, not for anybody else. And you know, Wolf, we did confront Yevgeny Prigozhin's outfit with those allegations made by the Ukrainians that he's essentially sending people with diseases to the front line. So far, we haven't heard any comment from Yevgeny Prigozhin's group. However, the Ukrainians are also telling us that they believe that more and more newly mobilized Russians are being sent to the front lines right around here in the south of Ukraine, where, of course, a lot of the tough fighting is going on. They say these people have absolutely no combat experience and are essentially cannon fodder. Wolf?
Fred Pleitgen in Odessa for us. Thank you very much. Stay safe over there. Let's get some more on the Biden administration's war strategy right now. CNN senior White House correspondent Phil Mattingly is joining us with details. Phil, the president huddled, I understand, with his top Pentagon officials today. What more can you tell us?
Wolf, that's right. The president meeting with the top military and civilian leadership in the Department of Defense. It was framed as a regular meeting, not addressing one specific issue, and it underscored just the sheer scale of tensions around the world, whether it is in Ukraine, which U.S. officials acknowledge is by far the most acute in this moment, obviously the ongoing tensions with China, Iran as well, and we've seen over the course of the last several weeks, Wolf, the scale of the North Korean provocations with their missile strikes and the potential for a new nuclear test. But there is nothing more front of mind right now than what's happening in Ukraine. You have seen it from U.S. officials, including the president, about the concerns about escalations. The concerns as Russia has notified U.S. officials of military exercises that include its strategic nuclear forces, and the very real concerns of the potential for a false flag operation related to a dirty bomb. Now, at this point, U.S. officials, Wolf, maintain they've still not seen any shift in U.S. or in Russian nuclear posture, nor have they picked up any indications that they are moving towards anything like that kind of action. But the tension is real, so is the caution right now, certainly an element of the discussions between the president and his military leaders. Ukraine, also a topic of discussion for another meeting the president had today, Wolf, with Israeli President Isaac Herzog. Obviously, Ukraine has taken a different approach than the U.S. as it pertains to Ukraine. They have provided significant humanitarian assistance. They are not sending weapons system for their own national security reasons. However, there is a shared interest in the efforts of Iran to assist Russia. That is expected to be a central component of their discussion as they meet in the White House. All of this underscoring right now that even in the midst of a very intense campaign season, the foreign policy issues, foreign policy crises the president has on his plate right now are very acute and very front and center, Wolf.
And my interview with the Israeli president, exclusive interview, I should say, coming up later this hour. Phil Mattingly, thank you very much. Let's get some analysis right now from the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, William Taylor, CNN counterterrorism analyst Phil Mudd, and CNN reporter Katie Boulillis. Ambassador Taylor, you're the former ambassador to Ukraine. How important was it that Russia agreed to swap, in effect, to release the body of this American who was killed fighting alongside Ukrainian troops?
Well, we want to be sure we get all the bodies, all the people home. The Ukrainians want to do the same. This suggests that there are conversations that are going on all of these issues. We know they've had conversations about prisoner swaps. This is another. We know they've had conversations about grain. So the conversations are important to proceed.
And let's see what happens next. You know, Phil, Russia, as you know, is conducting right now its planned nuclear exercises amid all this talk of some sort of tactical nuclear device or dirty bomb that they potentially could use. What should the U.S. be looking for?
Boy, there's a simple lesson of leadership in this situation. That is, the hotter it gets in the kitchen, the cooler the cook gets. When you're dealing with this publicly and you're talking from the White House, keep the temperature down. Don't make accusations or charges against the Russians in public. I would say the second question is the more interesting and also the much harder. That is, when you're talking to the Pentagon, and we just heard the president's talking to the Pentagon, and when you're talking to European leaders like Germany and France, the conversation about what would we do if the unthinkable happens, if the Russians use a tactical nuke, that is a really difficult conversation because clearly the Americans are going to say, we don't want troops out there. How tough can we be without putting our own forces at risk? Really tough, Wolf.
Yeah, amidst all of this, a few fault lines, Katie Bo, seem to have emerged, at least among some of the Republican leadership in the House of Representatives. Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader, saying Ukraine can't expect a, quote, blank check from the United States. So tell us about that.
Wolf, these remarks from Minority Leader McCarthy ignited a little bit of a firestorm in Washington that it appears that he has now had to do a little bit of clarification on with some of his senior national security leaders. What my colleagues and I have learned is that in the days following when those remarks went out on the airwaves, McCarthy spoke to a number of senior Republican national security lawmakers on Capitol Hill and sort of reassured them that his remarks were taken out of context. According to our sources, he told these lawmakers that, look, I still support ongoing military assistance for Ukraine and that I was only supporting the idea of more oversight for how these federal dollars are spent. But Wolf, this whole brouhaha really highlights this kind of fine line that McCarthy is going to have to walk, not just on Ukraine, but on foreign policy in general, right? He's got this wing of his party that is a little bit more isolationist-minded, even if GOP sources say that that's a relatively small wing. He can't afford to completely ignore those lawmakers, particularly if he wants to be Speaker of the House next year.
But isn't this, Ambassador Taylor, precisely what Putin, for example, wants to hear, this division emerging about Ukraine here in the United States?
That's what Putin wants to hear. But it's so interesting, exactly as Katie said, that both the right and the left are saying they were misinterpreted. Actually, they really do support Ukraine. They really do oppose the Russians. Mr. Putin has got everybody united in this country against him, not to mention united in Ukraine.
Let's talk a little bit more while I have you, Phil. The Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, he says the U.S., and I'm quoting him now, communicated directly and very clearly to Putin about the consequences of using some sort of nuclear weapon in Ukraine. We've also now learned that the CIA director actually visited Ukraine earlier this month. How do these conversations go?
Boy, there's two levels of conversation here. Look, at the Secretary of State level, there's only so much he can say to the Russians because he's not going to clarify what we would do in response. It's not even clear to me, and I suspect anybody at the White House, what the Europeans would support. So there's a general conversation. You've got to tell the Russians there are serious consequences. Secondary conversation, do you hear anything from the Russian side on this issue of nukes, on Brittany Griner, that leads you to believe there's a deal to be had? The CIA piece is more interesting, and that is, let's get real. What are you guys going to do?